German pilots laughed at the P-47. Thunderbolt, until its 850s, rained lead on them. They laughed at it. The German Luftwaffe aces, hardened by years of victories over Europe, smiled when they first heard about the new American fighter. Too heavy, they said, too clumsy. It looked like a flying refrigerator wrapped in aluminum. Its name, Thunderbolt, sounded bold, but to them it was almost ironic. Air war, they believed, belonged to those who danced among the clouds, who attacked like lightning and vanished before the enemy could even react. They were sure of their mastery. They thought Americans built planes for movies, not for war. And yet, one grey morning, the sky over Europe proved them wrong. That day, the clouds hung low and heavy, like a wall of steel. Several German fighters flew in formation, guarding their bombers. It seemed to be another quiet patrol. Far away, artillery rumbled, but above, the air felt calm and routine. Then the radar voice broke through. New targets approaching, slow, large, barely maneuvering. An easy kill. The pilots chuckled. Probably another fat Yankee gas wagon, one of them joked. They turned toward the blips, but as the distance closed, they noticed something strange. Those silhouettes were not Mustangs or Spitfires. The wings were thick, the bodies round, almost like armored beasts. One German pilot laughed. They must have put wheels on a tank. A moment later, the laughter stopped. The German leader dived first, choosing his angle, and fired. His tracers sparked against the metal skin and vanished. The Thunderbolt didn't even flinch. It rolled, climbed, and plunged straight into their formation. The roar of its engine filled the air. Then came the thunder. 850 caliber guns erupted at once. The German saw flashes, bright, white, blinding, and then his cockpit exploded in fire. The few who survived said later the sound was not a burst, but a solid sheet of metal tearing the sky apart. In seconds, chaos swallowed the formation. One Messerschmitt fell in flames. Another spiraled down in smoke. A third shattered mid-air. From the clouds came another Thunderbolt, then another and another. To the Germans below, it looked as if the storm itself had come alive. The Americans had named their plane well. Its design was unlike anything the Luftwaffe had faced. Instead of elegance, it carried armor. Instead of lightness, it carried endurance. Beneath its wide nose sat a massive radial engine that could survive hits that would rip other planes apart. Its wings were thick, unbreakable under stress. Its cockpit was a capsule of survival. The Germans learned that truth too late. Their slender, graceful fighters burned after a single volley. That encounter marked a turning point. The Luftwaffe, once certain of aerial supremacy, now faced a machine built not for beauty, but for brutality and survival. In that single battle, 7 German fighters were destroyed within minutes. One Thunderbolt came home riddled with hundreds of holes, but its pilot was alive. He later said quietly, "I just held the trigger. The rest was engine and steel." Why does this story matter? Because within it lies the essence of the Second World War. The Germans believed war was an art. The Americans proved it was a science. The Germans crafted masterpieces. The Americans built tools. And it was the tool that won. The Thunderbolt's creator, Alexander Kartveli, was the son of a Georgian engineer who fled to America. He dreamed of a plane that could fight and return home even if the sky was burning. He succeeded. The P-47 became a symbol of industrial warfare, the moment aviation lost its romantic soul and gained a mechanical one. It was not beautiful. It was inevitable. In the Luftwaffe headquarters, no one believed the first reports. 7 aircraft lost in one skirmish. Impossible. But when the photos arrived from the crash sites, disbelief turned to silence. Orders came down: avoid frontal combat with Thunderbolts. From that day, the hunters of the Reich became the hunted. American pilots quickly learned their new plane could do far more than defend itself. The Thunderbolt could dive faster than most German aircraft, and its 8 guns could slice through metal like saws. Soon they adopted a brutal new tactic: strike from above, unleash a single burst, and disappear into the clouds. The Germans called it the hammer blow. Fragments of intercepted radio chatter still exist. A German voice shouts, "A giant American, he's climbing again." Then silence, then gunfire, and finally one desperate word: jump. For the Americans, the Thunderbolt was more than a fighter. It was retribution made of steel. It escorted bombers over Germany, shredded convoys on the ground, smashed bridges and depots. Soldiers began calling it the flying hammer of the Allies. Wherever it appeared, smoke followed. And yet, the pilots loved it not for its firepower, but for its loyalty. They knew, if they were hit, they still had a chance. One man returned with a torn wing and half a tail missing. The mechanics counted the holes, shook their heads and said, "Any other plane would have been gone in a minute." That confidence changed the psychology of air combat. The Germans fought with calculation. The Americans fought with stubborn faith. They trusted their machines to forgive mistakes. That, more than anything, broke the balance of fear. In those months, the sky over Europe became a laboratory of technology. It was no longer a duel of knights, but a contest of factories. On each side flew brave men, but victory belonged to engineers. The Thunderbolt proved that courage and metal could merge into one. One mission became legend. 4 Thunderbolts met a formation of German fighters high above the Rhine. They were lower, slower, outnumbered. Then one pilot, a young lieutenant nicknamed Rocky, made a move that looked suicidal. He pulled hard on the stick, exposing his belly to the enemy. The Germans opened fire, certain he was losing control. But Rocky waited half a second and struck back. 8 guns blazed, 3 Messerschmitts vanished in fire. He survived, though later admitted he closed his eyes for a moment, not believing the plane would hold together. Stories like that spread quickly. With every week, the Luftwaffe lost another group of veterans. New recruits no longer felt like hunters. They feared the growl of the Thunderbolt's engine, the low, thunderous hum that signaled death from above. Even when no shots were fired, that sound alone drained their will. And yet the war in the air was never simple. Many German pilots who survived later admitted a grudging respect. One of them, Günther Rahl, wrote, "We laughed at it, but by the end I would have chosen to fly it over anything we had." It was ironic. The plane built for destruction became a symbol of mutual respect. It was not an instrument of revenge. It was a mirror of the war itself, reflecting human arrogance and humility. By the final year of the war, the Thunderbolt was the most numerous Allied fighter in the sky. Thousands flew from France to Poland, escorting convoys, bombing bridges, covering landings. And whenever that broad-winged shape appeared on the horizon, German radios whispered the same warning: "The storm is coming." But behind every plane stood people, mechanics who worked through frozen nights, patching bullet holes, engineers who shipped spare parts across the ocean. Pilots who climbed into their cockpits without thinking about glory, only about duty. They knew someone else would take their place if they did not return. Their persistence, their iron patience, and their machines of steel turned the tide. The Luftwaffe aces who once ruled the skies began to flee combat. And the American pilots who once doubted themselves became legends. Years later, one German veteran said, "We were like painters, they were like blacksmiths. Our art was beautiful, but their hammers broke our walls." That is the truth of the Thunderbolt. It was never about grace. It was about endurance, not about speed, but strength. Not about fame, but survival. It embodied the philosophy of the 20th century. Victory belongs not to the one who fires first, but to the one who can take the hit and keep flying. When the war ended, many Thunderbolt pilots returned home. Some said they still dreamed of clouds parting to sunlight, and then that familiar roar, the shudder of 8 guns, the smell of oil and gunpowder, the taste of metal in the mouth. But most remembered the silence after the fight. In that silence, they understood. Victory is not measured by the number of kills, but by the ability to survive without losing your soul. And so the Thunderbolt became more than a machine. It became a moral. Power without heart is useless. Heart without power is fragile. True victory lives only where both exist together. When the German pilots first saw it in the sky, they laughed. When the war ended, they no longer laughed. They remembered that roar of thunder that shattered their arrogance and filled the clouds with fear. And if you watch the old footage today and see that massive shape gliding through smoke, know this: it was not just a plane. It was the sound of an era when metal defeated illusion and endurance proved stronger than elegance. Perhaps that is the final lesson of the war. Mockery is often the prelude to defeat. Sometimes the one you call too heavy, too slow, is the one who will outlast everyone. Tell me what you think. Could a German ace, proud and confident, ever realize that this storm in the sky would change the fate of Europe itself? Or does arrogance always fly faster than reason?